Welcome to the podcast. On this episode of another lockdown edition, we've got Ed Skillz. Ed, welcome.
Hello. How are you? Thank you for having me on.
Really good, thanks. Obviously, we've been meaning to do this one for a while, so obviously this lockdown period is the perfect reason to get it done. So thank you for agreeing to come on. So where are you based, Ed, just to let everybody know?
I'm based in Belgium, in the French-speaking part of Belgium, Wallonie, close to the big city Liège.
Brilliant. Obviously, you're known for you've got pretty impressive Instagram page and a very distinct sort of photo editing style. I'd say. I mean, those that know you could probably see one of your pics without you in it and know it was yours. I'd say it's a real nice, unique style. So what we'd do, we'll come on to like the photography and the editing side things a bit later on. Yeah. I'd imagine you've probably got quite a few decent stories. I mean, the podcast listeners love a good story, and obviously you're well into your urban angling. I'd imagine you go to various different cities. You got any decent stories you can share?
Yeah, I got lots of stories. Let me pick one. The first one that comes up in my mind is one of the first trips I did to the center of Paris, and this is going years back, when not many anglers from abroad would go to Paris and fish the heart of the city. And I always pictured this view of the Eiffel Tower in front of me and being able to catch a carp out there. But there's these big signs down there which say it's not allowed to drive on with a car or even fish the place. So one time I thought, life is full of chances, so let's have one. And I just got down there in the middle of the night, drove my fan down, parked it up, prepared my rods, and put them out in the water. But I fell asleep, and in the morning when I woke up, there was a big sunshine. And all around me were tourists, a lot of Japanese, of course. There were even people getting married. And I had the best time in my life, it was amazing. And all of a sudden, I saw some police officers coming towards my fan, and they say, bonjour. I say, yeah, bonjour. And I think to myself, well, this be the end of my adventure, because they'll probably tell me I have to go. And the funny thing is, that I invited them to have a coffee with me, and they looked in my fan and they said, oh, you got a whole, you can live in this fan. I said, yes, I'm an angler, and I just like to travel a lot, and so I have everything in this fan that I need. And he says, oh, this is perfect. I should have one like this so I can travel with my son. So we sat down there, drank some coffee. We had a chat, I think, for like 1.5 hours, and never asked me about my fishing license or if it was even possible to fish there. So that was a good thing. And he went off, and with the lads were saying, well, maybe next week I'll try the same spot with my son. I said, you're welcome, man. And he left. So I had, it was perfect. It was great. The weather was good. Even got some good fish. The strange thing about the heart of the big cities is that there is night and there is day. And in the day, it's all friendly. There are lots of tourists and lots of friendly people. And in the night, everything turns. And the night before, I drove down very early. I think it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And now I sat down, and in the evening, all the tourists went. And I think it was like 1 o'clock in the night. There was a lot of cars coming up to my fan. And there's in the cars, there were some drug dealers. So apparently in the night, it was their hiding spot to deal drugs. And they were looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy doing here, sitting there in a fan. I have a camel fan, so it looks kind of weird, of course. And while 2 guys were dealing, 2 others came to me to check out if I was all right. And I said, what you doing, man? I said, well, I'm fishing. He said, well, this is our spot. I said, well, I don't care what you do. Do whatever you have to do, but I'm fishing. And that's it. That's all I want to do. So I have no bothering your stuff if you don't bother mine. And he said, where you from? I said, Amsterdam. And he said, oh, Amsterdam, yes. And it broke the ice, because he started talking about his family going to Amsterdam, smoking weed and everything, and I was all right with him. So they had a probably busy night and making lots of money. And I was still fishing there and had a good time. So
brilliant.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like normally you never would like to have a talk with these guys. And well, as long as you let them be and they let me be, it's all right. You can
Yeah.
have a good time. You make some good friends on the end of the line.
That's another world, isn't it? Fishing somewhere like that at night.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's also crazy to see the big difference between night and day.
Hmm.
And I think it was 3 days later, a friend of mine from Paris, he came by and he said to me, "Are you crazy in the head to fish this place in the night?" I said, "Well, I didn't know, man. I was just assumed it would be a lovely place to catch fish." He said, "Yes, but even the Paris people don't come there in the night."
You're I'm sure you can look after yourself. I've never met you, but you look like quite a sizable character from your pictures.
Yes, I'll be all right. I can manage myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So, where else have you fished? I mean, did you spend a lot of time there in Paris?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Paris, especially because I love the big rivers and I love
Yeah.
historic places. And Paris is one of these iconic historic places that somehow it catches you. You know,
Yeah.
when you visited it and you're there, you feel it in your heart. And I love to fish these places. Not only Paris, of course, but this is one of the major steps I did. And Liège is a very good one, which is one of the oldest cities in Belgium.
Right.
And through the heart of the city, again, same like Paris, a big river is flowing. And I love to fish the heart of Amsterdam. Did it for all my life. I think that because I was born or not born, I was raised in Amsterdam, so I fished a lot of in the city center over there as well. I think this is where the passion of urban angling started.
I bet that's another world as well. I mean, fishing Amsterdam at night must be quite interesting.
Yeah, 100%. But to be honest, I think fishing Amsterdam in night is way less dangerous than fishing Liège or Paris.
Right. And why is that, do you think?
Because the people are completely different, and
Yeah.
the how do you say? Amsterdam is very friendly to outsiders or strange things. Where nothing is
Yeah.
strange in Amsterdam. You know, they're very open,
Yeah. Yeah.
so they just let you be.
Yeah.
And it's a different thing from outside of Holland, where the public opinion is less easy.
Right. So when you fish these bigger rivers, I mean, 'cause obviously I'd imagine the flow you have to take into consideration. How would that change to the smaller sort of urban lakes and canals? Is it a completely new setup that you have to use to cope with it?
Yes and no. Of course, my rigs are about the same, maybe a little bit longer in size.
Hmm.
But the biggest difference is that you have to cope up with the stream, the current, and you have to put way bigger leads, heavier leads on than you normally would do on a lake or a canal,
Hmm. And
especially
what
when a
about
big boat passing.
I'd imagine.
Yeah, you have to make sure that everything stays there where you put it.
Yeah, yeah. And what about does your sort of baiting strategy vary when you're fishing some of these bigger places? I mean, does that get pushed around with the tow and the flow of the water?
The good thing, the big difference between a canal and a river is that a canal is a very flat. It's flat bottom, flat sides,
Right.
compared to a river, which most of the time have like a rocky base. So
Hmm.
lots of rocks down there. So even if the current would pick some of the bait up, it would still be not far.
Right. Got you. So it's sort of buffeted by all the rocks and everything else.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
And then is it very sort of quiet, hush hush when you catch fish from there, or do you find you get people sort of jumping in on your spots? How do you go about that? Do you keep everything sort of under the radar while you're on there?
Yeah, I try to keep things under the radar because like fishing the river successfully is a hard thing. So as soon as they notice that you're catching some good fish, there are always people there that don't have the balls to go out there and try and find their own spot and just like to take your spot. And
Yeah.
normally, basically, I try to be in at the dark and leave early in the morning. So during the day, they won't see me.
Right. Yeah, very wise. And do you do all of your fishing from your van, like in those scenarios?
Most of the time, I use my fan because beefing up is a bit dangerous. So it feels more comfortable being able to close the door of the van instead of having the zipper of the bivvy, which is logical. And I fish a lot from a small dinghy. So I just use a dinghy, put the stuff in I need, and go out on the river and tie up to a pole or anything which is near.
Right.
And this works as well because you got nothing to harm from anybody from the shore because they get with you.
Yeah, very sensible. I'd imagine you might have some funny other stories. You got any other funny moments you can share from there or anywhere else?
Yes. I think one time I was baiting up in one of the canals in Amsterdam, and it was in the heart of winter. I was trying to spread my bait around one of the bridges, and there was this old lady coming down to me, and she was furious, out of the blue. She said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I said, "I'm baiting." She said, "No, you're polluting everything, and you don't have to feed the ducks because if you feed the ducks, they will die." I said, "I'm not feeding the ducks. I'm trying to feed the carp." She said, "What carp? There's no carp in here." I said, "Yes, there is." So I can imagine it looks a bit strange when you're just out there with a big bucket full of bait, and somebody is not into carp fishing. It looks very strange. So to her, it looked like I was polluting the canal. Or trying to kill the birds with the baits. I'm not sure, but she wasn't amused.
Have you ever had any proper trouble or anything like that, where you've had to pack up and go?
Yes, not well. Let's say I didn't pack up and go because I hate packing up and go. But I ended up in some strange situations. I think one of the most remarkable ones. I found a really nice spot on the river, and it was an old tunnel under the road. And when you would pass the tunnel, you would come up to the river stream, which was perfect for me. And I was sat there in the dark. And in the middle of the night, I could see on the other side of the river, there was a tunnel as well with some lighting, industry area. And there was this car parking up under the tunnel. Two guys come out and they pop up the trunk. And I was sitting there looking at it and I was like, what the hell are they doing here? You know, it was like middle in the night. I think it was 3 o'clock in the night. They pulled the guy out of the trunk and they shot him at the place, throwing him in the river. And at this moment, it's like a film happening in front of your eyes. You're like, is this real? Is this really happening? And then the second thought was, well, I hope I don't get a bite now, because if my bite alarm will go off now, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Because I'm a witness, you know. Yeah. So I sat there, not really shitting my pants, but I was a bit nervous. And when they went away, I was like, oh man, what just happened? I left it for what it was. And I think about 3 days later in the newspaper, they wrote a story about that. I found a guy in the river downstream. So it really happened.
Huh. Wow. That moment, like you say, when you're there trying to keep quiet, praying for to not get a screamer.
Yes, yeah. I couldn't imagine what would have happened if the screamer would have gone off. Because I can imagine they first of all, they would never know I was there, and when they found out I was there, I wouldn't be in the right place at the right time.
No, oh my God. You certainly don't get that fishing on the gravel pits locally on the Cotswolds.
No, normally
not. Wow. And is that your main passion, the urban side of things? Do you do sort of any of the lakes and that round your way or not?
Yeah, I do a lot of the lakes as well, especially the bigger lakes that are wild and undiscovered. We have some of them over here, and in the mountains in Germany. Some in France as well. And it's beautiful because when you go out there, they're very, very wide. You know, you have to talk about lakes like between 100 and 200 and 300 hectares lake. So they're really big.
Wow.
You will not see anybody there. Even if you are there for 2 weeks, you won't see nobody.
Right.
So you're there, out there, just you and nature, which
The
is
proper
amazing.
way.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, the way it should be done. How did you get into it, Ed? I mean, where did it all start? With obviously moving on to the urban thing. I mean, did you fish from a child, from a young age?
Yeah, I started fishing when I was like 5 years old
Right.
and very young. And nobody was fishing in my family, so everybody was like, "Where did he have it from?" We still don't know, but I left it. And all my free time, I spent fishing. And when I had to do homework, I was fishing. So I was out there all the time, and I grew up on a small farm place, which was surrounded by water, and I
Right.
got the chance to just go out there on a warm day, lay on my stomach, and observe the carps for hours. So I was intrigued by this fish, especially the carps. Um, so in the beginning, I fished for everything, but I think it was like 9 or 10 years, and from that moment on, I only started fishing for carp.
Right. Can you remember catching your very first one?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
How did that happen?
By observing the carp, I made this hand line, and I had one hook, and I found some worms, put the worms on,
Yeah.
and tried to cast in between them. It worked, and they took the line. This is how I caught my first carp. Yeah.
Wow. And have you got photos or anything of it like that?
Well, I think probably my parents should have some. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I have
Amazing.
some old ones, but not so many. Not of my first one, but I remember they showed me a couple of years back my first carp. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. There's nothing quite like, is it, that first fish, the way it fights.
Yeah, it's amazing. You can't compare it to a bream or a tench.
No.
You know, it's completely different.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously, when did you get into the photography side of things and the editing? Because obviously you're a tattoo artist as well, and you will touch on that in a bit. But where did the photography side of things come from?
Also, from a very early age, I was always trying to be creative. You know, create things
Mhm.
and make things and seeing things differently than most people around me did. So I think photography already started with analog, and
Yeah,
after digital cameras were introduced, it only became easier to do more shots and be more creative.
yeah.
So I think I was 12 or 13 when I started out with photography.
And what sort of setup do you use these days?
For years I've been connected to Canon. I was in love
Right.
with Canon because I
Yeah.
thought they were doing the best job that I could do on a camera, which was
Hmm.
out there. And I did a lot of work on the Canon 5D. And I
Right.
think it's about 3 years or 4 years back that I stepped over from Canon to Sony,
Right.
and now I'm on the Sony cameras. I think Sony it's way ahead of Canon now.
Yeah.
Uh, it's very handy, good quality. They're not so heavy as the Canon ones, so they're easier to bring on my adventures, and they take a really good picture.
Yeah. And if you sort of then built your lenses up around the Sony mount.
Mm, Not really. I had a lot of Canon class
Right.
collected over the years.
Yeah.
So I have some Sonys, but the Canon glass is superb, and I still use them on the Sony cameras as well.
Right. Have you seen the adverts for the new Canon mirrorless, the R5?
Yes, yes, I've seen it, and I must say I'm honestly intrigued by this one.
Yeah, it looks
So
good.
I can't see in the future, but I can see me buying one. That's for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, let everyone test it first, sort out all the problems with a new camera, and
Correct,
then
correct.
purchase one.
Yes,
Yeah, very wise. I've got the Canon R, so I've got two lenses for that, two RF mount lenses. They're nice lenses, and the
Yeah, good
Canon
one.
seem to be sort of putting all their development into that and slowly sort of easing back from the EF mount.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this new camera coming out is the battle they try to do against the Sony ones.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how, because obviously a lot a lot of people made that switch from Canon to Sony, didn't they, a few years ago?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how it performs and how it sells. I mean, I don't know what it's going to retail for. It's going to be an expensive bit of kit, but yeah, it's definitely going to be an intriguing one.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. The specs look good anyway.
yeah, yeah, and then the editing side of things, like I say, obviously you've got a really distinctive editing style. How did that come about?
Again, from the creative background, being a tattoo artist and a drawer.
Yeah,
Again, when I take a picture, I see things differently with my eyes than with what is coming out with the camera.
right.
So to get the better perspective of how I live my adventures,
Hmm.
I started editing the pictures the way I see my adventure.
Right. How how do you go about that? Is that all done in Lightroom or Photoshop, or what do you use for that?
I started out with Photoshop years back,
Yeah,
and afterwards, when Lightroom came out, I started working on Lightroom. So this was
right.
years and years back.
Yeah, yeah,
Lightroom turned out to be the quicker and easier way to edit your pictures instead of Photoshop.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so you're involved with carp crossing as well, aren't you?
Yes, correct. I own car
Yeah,
crossing.
yeah. So talk to us a bit about that as well, because obviously for those that don't know, can you tell us what that is and yeah, just give us a bit of background about that.
The Carp crossing started out, I think, 10 years ago,
Hmm.
and I felt the need to create a space online for myself in which I could share my adventures with the people without or with being independent from the so-called big magazines at that time.
Hmm.
And online, there was not much out there to deal with carp. So one time I sat with a friend of mine who is a creative artist as well, and he had done some traveling to Australia, and he showed me some pictures of his trip with the signs of crocodile. Watch out for the crocodiles passing. And I was like, this looks a bit like my adventures, which I do all the time with the carp fishing. And they came out with the term carp crossing. And he said to me, oh, that's an awesome idea. We should create a sign. And so we did. So we created the carp crossing sign, which was just like about the same as the crocodile crossing sign in Australia. Instead of a
Yeah,
crocodile, it had carp. That's how it started out. I started doing my own stories, posting my pictures. Not very soon after, or shortly after, people asked me if they could contribute to the site as well because they loved the idea. And it grew out to what it is now. And at the moment, it's probably the biggest platform on carp fishing in the world. I never thought it would be this big, but apparently there's a lot of carp anglers out there that like to show the passion in their way without being restricted by companies or magazines or editors. And in this situation, carp crossing is a perfect solution because there are no boundaries.
yeah. And so again, but talk us a bit about what it actually is. I mean, what's on there? If I was to go onto the website now, what would I find?
Well, if you go on the website now, you won't find anything because we're rebuilding the place. Because the lockdown is a perfect time to rebuild things.
Yeah,
Probably will be online early next week again.
yeah,
What you will find is a complete archive of articles from anglers all over the world from the last years. Because, like I said, I started out with a one-man team. What now we have like 130 anglers worldwide working for Carp Crossing, contributing their articles and videos every week.
wow,
We have a quite quite a good audience on Instagram as well, where you can find us, Facebook as well. What I really like to show is that we're all different people, but we're all connected by one thing, which is carp fishing. The love of carp fishing united a lot of people which normally wouldn't be in touch with each other. But because of the love for the angling and living the adventure, living the dream, you find like people, like-minded people all over the world, which all of a sudden become friends because of the carp fishing. And I think sharing this passion is the biggest angle we have on carp crossing. I think this is what
like
what
a huge
means carp
online.
crossing. Yeah,
It's really good. And you're right, it does attract every walk of life, doesn't it, carp fishing?
Yeah.
Yes, I've got as well a few questions. Most of them are photography based. So Mark Woozy on Instagram asked, like, I know it's a bit of a very vague question almost, but what are your go-to camera settings? Have you got like a base setting that you start with? Obviously, it depends on light levels, but let's say for trophy shots.
Yeah, that's very hard to say because it all depends on the light and the situation. Because photography is actually registering light, and because of the light, we can see things. So the camera is actually your eye, and with the camera, you can tweak the eye to get in the lens what you want to have in the lens. But you can imagine that all the situations are different. If you have shadows, if you have sun on the back, sun on the front, sun on the side. So it's very hard to say which basic setting you need. The only thing I can say, it's very important to keep your ISO as low as possible. Because the lower you keep the ISO, the less artificial light you get into the camera. So it's more important to look at where is the light coming from. And in this situation, I mean the sun. So even if it's cloudy and the sun is behind the clouds, you have to make sure that you're facing the sun. Always. And if you face the sun, you have the best perfect lighting, and from there you go into the settings of your camera and tweak it for the best image.
Yeah.
But keep
so when you say face the sun, do you mean the person holding the fish or the person holding the camera?
The person and the fish should face the sun.
Yeah. Yes, it's a big mistake, isn't it? That you see, I mean, like you say, even if it's cloudy, people just tend to take the picture and then they've put the fish back and they're left with an underexposed image or just shadows with no detail.
Well, most people make the mistake of looking at the perfect background. So you see this couple of branches or this trees, and you think, oh, this would be the perfect background. But if the light ain't there, you cannot use this background for a good picture.
Yeah. No, definitely. Talk us through a little bit about the settings. So for those that don't know, give us like a brief overview of aperture and shutter speed and ISO, like sort of three main ones, just what they do.
Well, the basic things I use, like I said, is the ISO. I always shoot in manual, so I can control every setting I have in my camera to get the best shot. But the ISO is the most important one. And for instance, the shutter speed, you can push it lower. If you push the shutter speed lower, most of the time you get more light in. But if you are not very sturdy or you don't have a tripod, then don't play around with the shutter speed because we'll get a shaky image. So the shutter speed, I think the lowest you can go on the shutter speed without getting too much distractions in the image is like 50 or 60.
Right.
If you go lower, you really have to use a tripod. But on the other end, if you take a fish shot, a fish is moving. If you don't hold it good, and so the shutter speed shouldn't be too low or you get a blurry image.
Right. And then aperture?
The aperture, it all depends. I think the best thing is about the digital cameras nowadays is that you have live view on your camera. So the great thing about live view is that you can see exactly what you are changing straight away. So the best thing I can always say is when you go on a place to fish, Yeah, for example, you're on a lake, you got your rods out, everything is set up. Don't go on Netflix and start watching movies. Just play around with your camera settings. So at the time you catch a fish, you already know what you have to do or what the best settings will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good. Yeah, very valid point. So you're just doing as much prep work as possible for those conditions.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So what does the future hold for carp crossing and for you?
What will the future hold for carp crossing? The plan for the future is that I will try and create more designs, and we would like to create more of a urban carp fishing lifestyle with the clothing we do, follow out that way. So we started out with clothing with the carp pressing logo, the big sign. And from out there, I'm trying to create new things, you know, and my tattoo background comes in that place as well, comes in handy. So I think over the years, we'll see some more of these things happening, more clothing, new designs. And we like to focus again more on the romantic side of carp fishing, the adventure side of carp fishing, and pushing out the quality in photography and video. Then I would like to, and not to push the way of the companies. So right. It's a different approach.
So do you think you'll do any photography and videography tutorials and things for the website?
Well, to be honest, I sat down in lockdown, as we all are by now, and I was thinking maybe it's time to do some online photography tutorials.
Yeah.
Because I have the time now. So it's funny you asked me this. So I think I will try to push some of these out over the next coming weeks, so people will be able to connect and get an online tutorial about photography and even editing Lightroom. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I already brought out a set of my own Lightroom presets for people to use. And they are for sale on the Carp Crossing web shop. So if there are people out there who would like to try out my own settings, a couple of them, a set is for sale called the Carp Angling Lightroom Preset.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really good, and it's a really popular thing to do. I've seen quite a few people offering similar, not in the carp fishing world, just in photography in general. Some sort of names on YouTube. Yeah, I think it's a real popular way of doing it. One final thing that I'm asking everyone to do on this sort of lockdown series, and this is probably going to be slightly easier for you with your artistic background. I want everyone that I'm asking to draw a carp in 60 seconds and then send me the image, and I'm going to do like a little competition. But I want you to video it as well if you can. So get the timer in shot. And just video you just a 60-second sketch of a carp. And then I'm going to post it against the next person I do. Again, probably you're probably at a slight advantage being a tattoo artist. So but I'm going to do it anonymously, and then like the winner of that round go through to the next round, and we're going to do that just as a bit of fun and to keep spirits up in this time where everyone's stuck inside.
Yeah, no worries. I like the challenge in that one. Yes.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so what I'll do, we'll end this shortly, and I'll get you to jot that down and then fire it over on email.
Yeah, perfect. Let's do that.
Brilliant. Okay, lovely. Ed, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, mate.